Hi there, I'm Shannan. And this was never supposed to be a story. It started with a smell, Evelyn's casserole, coming from the kitchen window of a house she no longer lived in because she was gone. But somehow, my sister had stepped into her apron, her home, her memory, and left me on the outside. How does a family decide who belongs and who doesn't? Have you ever felt like your childhood home forgot you before you had the chance to leave it? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you're ready to follow this story where it goes next. I wasn't planning to stop. I was only passing by, just walking the long way back from the store because the weather felt like Evelyn. Crisp, not cold, clean, not sharp, the kind of afternoon she used to call gentle air. But then the smell hit me. Not just any smell, casserole, not the generic kind, Evelyn's kind. Buttery corn folded into creamed rice, thyme baked into the crust, a whisper of paprika no one ever got quite right, no one except her. And Evelyn had been gone for 8 months. I stood still on the sidewalk outside her house. My house now, at least on paper. The windows were lit. Someone was inside. I stepped closer. And then I saw her. Darlene. Through the window, past the sheer curtains Evelyn never liked but left up anyway, I saw my sister in the kitchen, stirring something in a cast-iron pan, wearing Evelyn's apron, faded, floral, the hem unraveling in the left corner where I once stitched it back as a teenager. She moved like she owned the place, like she'd always belonged there. I didn't knock. I didn't trust what would come out of my mouth. Instead, I just watched. There were voices I didn't recognize. Young, loud, careless. Laughter that didn't belong in that kitchen. Not like that. Not bouncing off Evelyn's tiles like it was just another house, just another weekend. The casserole was coming out of the oven. Darlene smiled, holding it with the oven mitt Evelyn used to let hang like a decoration on the fridge handle. It was a performance, a scene built for people who didn't know any better. I backed away, not because I was scared, because something was being rewritten in front of me, and I hadn't been given a copy of the script. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting everything Evelyn had once told me mattered: respect, memory, silence when words would do harm, and words when silence would do worse. So the next morning I went back. Not to argue, not even to reclaim, just to collect a few things Evelyn had promised me verbally years ago. Her handwritten recipe cards, her journals, her scarf drawer, which smelled like lavender and old pennies. The house was empty when I arrived. At least, it sounded empty. I used the spare key Evelyn had insisted I keep, even when Carolyn said it was sentimental overkill. Inside, everything looked newer, like it had been cleaned within an inch of its life. Candles burned in corners, pine and lemon. Nothing about it felt familiar. I walked into the living room. The bookshelf was neater than I remembered. Too neat. Evelyn's box was gone. The little wooden chest that had held decades of notes, observations, grocery lists she never threw away. I checked the closet, the drawers, the attic hatch. Then something drew me toward the fireplace. It hadn't been used in years. Evelyn hated ashes, but today there were ashes. Gray, soft, still warm. In the corner of the pile, something half-burnt curled like a leaf. I knelt, picked it up gently. The corner of a page. Evelyn's handwriting. Unmistakable. The ink blurred, but I could still read. Lavender always helps the ache. My throat closed. They hadn't just taken the house. They were erasing her. The folder was mine. Evelyn had written my name on the tab in blue ink, her neat cursive, tight and deliberate. I had left it behind the last time I came to gather the rest of her documents. Small things, really, but things she would have wanted handled right. When I entered the house that evening, it smelled like floor polish and sugar. Something artificial, too bright. I moved quickly through the foyer, past the living room that no longer felt lived in, and toward the study. Darlene was in the hallway before I reached the door, arms crossed, chin tilted up. "What are you doing here again?" she asked, her voice light but her stance firm. I left a folder, Evelyn's medical proxies and one of the old letters from the church. I didn't make eye contact. I didn't want to escalate. I just wanted to collect what was mine and leave. Darlene didn't move. You can't just come and go anymore. This house has changed. My stomach turned. The house hadn't changed. They had. I still have a key, I said. It's legal. That doesn't make it right. Her voice dropped a note, sharpened. I reached past her shoulder to open the door. She stepped in front of me. You don't deserve this house. You never did. The words weren't yelled. They were delivered slowly, each syllable polished for effect. And they hit like a slap. Not because they were new, but because she said them like they were universally accepted, like she was stating fact. I turned, searching for someone, anyone, to confirm that this wasn't okay, that it was too far, that it crossed a line Evelyn herself would have drawn in permanent ink. Carolyn stood at the kitchen doorway. She had heard everything. She didn't say, Darlene, enough. She didn't say, don't talk to your sister like that. She just looked at me, then back at Darlene, and said quietly, don't mind her. You've always been sensitive. The air didn't go out of my lungs. It thickened, like I couldn't decide whether to hold my breath or let it out. It was the same sentence she had said when I was 8 and cried over a painting I worked on for 2 weeks that Darlene accidentally spilled juice on, when I was 15 and came home shaking after failing my driver's test, when Evelyn was taken off life support and I wanted to sit alone by her bed. You've always been sensitive. It wasn't just dismissal. It was a rewriting, like everything I'd ever felt was just temperament, just me being too much. Darlene smirked, walked past me without a word. I heard her laughing with someone in the other room, her voice rising and rising like nothing had happened. I reached into the study, found the folder, right where I left it. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I just turned and walked back down the hallway, past my mother who still hadn't moved, out the door that no longer needed slamming to be final. I had come for documents. I left with something else. The call came just after lunch, while I was rereading a zoning brief that didn't need rereading. My brain hadn't been working right for days. Something about the house, about the silence I left it in, like I'd slammed a door I used to knock on gently. Shannan? The voice on the phone said. It was Evelyn's attorney, the one who had guided me through the will, who spoke in that slow, grieving way that never felt staged. The one who told me I was doing fine when I barely spoke during the reading. I just wanted to follow up. We were organizing some files on our end and realized we never confirmed that you received the personal letter from Evelyn. I blinked. What letter? There was a pause. She wrote you a handwritten note, said it was private, just for you, sealed it herself, left instructions. I stared at the wall across from me, the crack in the paint I had ignored for months, the same one Evelyn had said resembled a branch, something stubborn and growing. No, I said finally, I didn't get anything like that. That's strange, he replied, his voice sharpening just slightly. Your mother confirmed everything had been passed on. Maybe it's with some of the other documents. I thanked him, hung up, and didn't hesitate. An hour later, I was back at Evelyn's house. It didn't feel like home anymore. Not even haunted, just foreign. Like someone had taken a house I once knew and painted over every memory. The bedroom smelled like dust and bleach. The curtains had been replaced, the pillows fluffed in a way Evelyn never did. She didn't believe in decor that wasn't used. I checked the desk drawers first, then the linen closet, then the boxes under her bed. Nothing. But something told me to try higher. The top shelf of her closet had always been hard to reach. Evelyn used to store out-of-season sweaters up there, always wrapped in tissue paper like they were gifts she gave herself. I pulled a chair under me and stood up. Behind a stack of shoe boxes, there it was. Ivory envelope, thick paper, folded but not damaged. My name, Shannan, written across it in her handwriting. The seal was broken, not torn, lifted with care and then pressed back down. My chest went cold. I sat on the edge of her bed. My bed now, technically. But it didn't feel like mine in that moment. Inside was one page, slightly stained at the edge. The ink curled just a little from age or moisture. If you're reading this, I'm gone, it began. But I want you to know, I never stopped seeing you. I exhaled, long and slow. She had seen me, not just tolerated me, not just included me out of guilt. She had seen me. You were the only one who never asked me for anything, she wrote. You just showed up, you gave me peace. You made me feel like I didn't need to be anyone but myself. I didn't cry. My body felt incapable of tears. This house is yours not because I had no one else, the letter went on, but because I had no one else who would protect it. My hands tightened around the page. It wasn't just about me. It was about the house, the memory, the space Evelyn had built and filled and trusted someone to hold when she no longer could. Someone had tried to keep this letter from me. Someone had read it, judged it, and then decided I didn't need to know how I was loved. I folded the page back into the envelope, even though the seal had already been broken. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't talk to anyone. But I did take out the small fireproof cabinet I kept under my desk, the one I used for passports and birth certificates, and that one photo of Evelyn and me from her garden. I added the envelope, labeled the folder, Proof of Why I Stay. I hadn't planned to stay long, just a quick drop-off, one of Evelyn's old hardcovers I'd borrowed years ago and found buried under a box of tax returns. I didn't want to keep it. Something about it felt heavy now, like a borrowed presence I didn't deserve to carry anymore. Carolyn's house still smelled like lemon polish and fake vanilla, a scent that clung to holiday tablecloths and synthetic smiles. I let myself in through the back, like always, but this time, no one was waiting for me. I heard laughter from the living room, muffled but unmistakably warm. I paused at the edge of the hallway, book in hand. They were all there. Darlene, 2 cousins, an aunt from San Marcos. A cake box sat open on the table, half-eaten. Carolyn saw me and blinked like I'd wandered in from a storm. "Oh, you're here," she said. She didn't move to greet me, just glanced at the book in my hands and nodded. That's when I saw it. Above the fireplace, large, gold-framed, a new family portrait. Everyone was there. Darlene in the center, one child on her hip, one on each side. Carolyn and Donald standing tall behind them. Even the San Marcos aunt had a spot, smiling in a floral blouse she hadn't worn since her 3rd wedding. And I wasn't there, not on the wall, not in the caption beneath it that read, "Family rooted in love, spring reunion." Not even in the reflection of the glass. I stepped closer, just enough to confirm what my gut already knew. Darlene glanced over her shoulder. "You were probably busy that weekend," she said. "And you're not big on photos, right?" Carolyn chimed in, voice light. "You're always the one behind the camera anyway." I said nothing, because I remembered that weekend. I had been home, alone. I'd even baked that strawberry bread Evelyn used to like. No one had called, no one had asked. The last family photo I was in had been years ago. Evelyn was still alive then. She'd made everyone wear blue. That frame had hung near the entryway until it quietly disappeared sometime after the funeral. I didn't ask where it went. I left the book on the table. Carolyn didn't say thank you. Darlene didn't look up again. I walked out the door without a sound. A week later, I returned to Evelyn's house. There was a legal document I needed to retrieve, a bank detail Evelyn had filed separately. I arrived mid-morning, expecting the place to be empty. The front hallway had changed. Fresh flowers, new paint, a different rug beneath my feet. And on the wall, hung with meticulous symmetry, was the same family portrait, enlarged, reframed, centered. I stared at it. A man I didn't know passed behind me, holding a bottle of champagne. He smiled, then asked, "You're the tenant, right?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I walked straight past him, through the hall, into the study. They weren't just replacing Evelyn. They were replacing me. The text lit up my phone at exactly 12:41 a.m. I was half asleep, my mind floating between dream fragments and the quiet hum of the ceiling fan. I reached for it, expecting a news alert, maybe something from Lucas. Instead, it was Reed. "Sign the papers. You're just one person. Stop being difficult." No greeting, no explanation, just that. I sat up in bed, blinking at the screen. My hands didn't shake from fear. What I felt was sharper than that, a kind of clean, bitter clarity. Not just anger, not just insult. It was trespass. They weren't just pushing me out emotionally anymore. They were moving in, legally, strategically, and without shame. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot. Then I opened a private folder in my cloud drive and labeled it Contingency. That morning, I didn't go into the office. I went to the courthouse. The records clerk was polite, unbothered. She tapped a few keys, asked for my ID, and printed what I needed without blinking. I looked at the top of the stack, my name still on the deed, still holding, for now. But on the fourth page, stamped and processed 2 days ago, was a notice of contest filed against Evelyn's will, filed by Reed. The claim? Evelyn had not been mentally stable in her final year, that she had been coerced and isolated, that her decision to leave the house to me was uncharacteristic and likely the result of manipulation. Attached to the filing, a family affidavit, signed by Darlene, signed by Carolyn. My knees buckled for half a second, but I caught myself. I didn't cry in the courthouse hallway. I didn't scream or curse. I stepped outside into the sun and let the heat anchor me. If they wanted a war in writing, they were about to get one. I spent the afternoon at my desk, quiet as always, but sharper than I'd felt in weeks. I reread the notice, line by line. I marked phrases, highlighted inconsistencies, and then I turned to the affidavit. My sister Shannan has always been emotionally unstable, Darlene had written. She became fixated on Evelyn in her later years and often acted as if she was entitled to things Evelyn never promised her. Carolyn's statement echoed that same cold rhythm. Evelyn was a kind woman, but vulnerable. Shannan is private, withdrawn, and often misunderstood intentions. I believe Evelyn was manipulated by proximity and guilt. Sentence after sentence, they carved me down, made me small, untrustworthy, unstable, and yet none of it made me cry. What cut deepest wasn't the lies. It was knowing exactly where they came from and realizing they believed this narrative long before they ever wrote it down. I opened the drawer beside me, pulled out Evelyn's letter, the real one, the one they had tried to keep from me. The edges still smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. I ran my fingers along her handwriting and whispered her words under my breath like armor. You were the only one who never asked me for anything. This wouldn't be easy, but I knew who I was now, and I knew whose house this was. It started with soup. Lucas brought it in a thermos he said belonged to his sister. Lentil, with carrots, and something lemony that made me feel briefly alive between chills. He hovered for a while, but I waved him off. My skin ached. My eyes watered from exhaustion more than fever. I'll lock the door behind me, he whispered. I remember nodding, or maybe I just imagined it. That weekend disappeared in fragments, shadows crossing the window, faint knocks I dismissed as dreams, the hum of the radiator. I barely got out of bed. My body felt borrowed. Once I thought I heard someone come in. Footsteps I didn't recognize. Softer than Lucas's, slower. I didn't have the strength to open my eyes long enough to care. When I woke on Monday, the fever had lifted. My clothes stuck to me with stale sweat. I peeled them off and sat up slowly, trying to shake the fog. Something about the room felt wrong. Not messy, not invaded, just touched. My drawer, the one under the desk where I kept Evelyn's original deed, was shut, but not quite the way I left it. I always kept the folder tilted slightly forward so I could grab it without opening the drawer all the way. Now it lay flat. I told myself I was imagining it, that Lucas must have moved it while tidying. That exhaustion warps memory. But a part of me already knew better. Later that week, I drove out to Carolyn's house. Not because I missed her, but because guilt still masqueraded as obligation in my chest. She was in the backyard, pruning bushes that never grew the way she wanted. I didn't make it to the door. I stopped when I heard her voice, clear, matter of fact. We can file it, she said. She won't even realize. She's always so distracted lately. Darlene laughed. Exactly. We get it done before she gets a lawyer involved. Just like you did with the power of attorney back then. They were standing 10 feet from me, just out of sight. I didn't move. I barely breathed. There was no venom in their voices, just calculation, calm coordination. That somehow made it worse. I turned and left. They didn't see me, or maybe they did and didn't care. The next morning, I called the clerk's office. Something had been filed, a petition for amended ownership, citing ambiguity in the will's language. I drove home, numb. My first stop was the drawer. I opened it. Empty. The folder was gone. I stood there for several minutes trying to trace it. Had I moved it? Loaned it to someone? No, I had locked that drawer every night like a ritual. And then I remembered. The footsteps during the fever. The quiet click of a door. the slight breeze that followed. My mother, Carolyn, the same woman who once wiped sweat from my neck and whispered lullabies, had waited until I was too weak to move, and taken what she thought would let her win. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I scanned every backup I had, photocopies, digital files, Evelyn's letter. I uploaded everything to the cloud, then printed 2 hard copies and locked them in a fireproof box under my desk. That night, before I went to bed, I whispered aloud, not to Lucas, not to Evelyn, just to myself. No one is ever going to steal me blind again. I saw the envelope before I even opened the door. Thick paper, cream-colored, curled slightly at one edge, like it had been placed there gently, but with purpose. It rested on the mat like it belonged, like it had every right to greet me before the sunlight did. I knew what it was before I touched it, but I opened it anyway. Inside was a wedding invitation. Not just any wedding, Darlene and Reed, again. A renewal, the card called it. Like the past could be rewritten if they just threw enough tulle and white hydrangeas at it. Venue, the family home. Dress code, garden formal. And at the bottom in soft gray script that looked almost handwritten, #back where we belong. My hands didn't shake from surprise. They shook because rage has a way of curling your fingers when there's nowhere else to send it. I called Lucas. "Tell me this isn't real," I said. He didn't respond right away. "That house doesn't belong to them," I whispered. "No," he said, "but that's never stopped them before." 2 days later, I made the mistake of checking Facebook. Photos from the prep team, whoever they were, snapshots of flower arrangements being tested in Evelyn's front yard, fairy lights strung around the fence posts, a caption that read, "Turning history into celebration." Evelyn's reading chair had been dragged outside, now draped in white chiffon, a ribbon tied across the armrests. In another photo, a whiteboard labeled Day of Timeline leaned against the wall of what used to be my bedroom. Beside it, Bridal Suite Prep 10 a.m. My breath caught in my chest and stayed there. The screen blurred, not from tears, just from not blinking. They weren't just erasing me anymore. They were replacing me. I closed the browser. Then I reopened it. Like pain needs confirmation. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years had tagged me in a post. A selfie with Darlene at the mock reception table. Caption, "Can't wait to celebrate this new chapter. #back where we belong." I stared at the hashtag. They were holding a wedding in the house Evelyn left me because she said I was the only one who never asked for anything. And they were doing it under a banner that claimed the space was always theirs. I didn't comment. I didn't text back. I deleted the tag. Then I deleted the app. Then I walked to the file cabinet under my desk. I pulled out Evelyn's letter, the original, not the copy, the one they never wanted me to find. I laid it flat on my desk, next to the printed emails from the records office, the time-stamped screenshots, the deed copy, and the affidavit they forged. Because this wasn't about sentiment anymore. It was about evidence. It was the caption that hit harder than the photo. Mom's birthday surrounded by love. Smiling faces. Darlene in her pale blue dress. Carolyn holding a plate of cake. Cousins clinking glasses in the backyard. Evelyn once spent hours weeding in silence. The trees looked familiar, but the people felt foreign. Or maybe I did. I scrolled twice to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. I hadn't received an invite. Not a message. Not even a forwarded group text. Just this. Someone else's idea of family, posted for all to see. There was a comment from my cousin Angela. "So beautiful. What a perfect way to honor Mom. Everyone's here." I stared at that word. Everyone. I texted Carolyn. "You forgot to tell me?" She responded 5 minutes later. "You never really liked parties. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." My fingers went numb. I remembered being 12, watching my birthday cake melt in the sun because no one thought to bring it in. Carolyn had said the same thing then. "You're just not the party type." That afternoon, I parked across from the house. I didn't get out, just watched. Laughter floated through the windows. Someone was playing a piano app through a speaker, cheap, clunky notes meant to feel elegant. I imagined the candles, the plastic wine glasses, the off-brand champagne. I sat in silence. That evening, I returned. No knocking, no announcing myself. just walked in through the side door, folder in hand. Darlene was already loud. "Oh, look, here comes the lawyer. Ready to sue your own family again?" I didn't answer. I placed the file folder on the table, the one with the deed, Evelyn's letter, and every notarized page they tried to bury. Carolyn muttered, "Let's not do this now." Darlene stepped closer. Her face flushed, mouth curled like she was ready for a stage fight. "You don't even deserve this house," she spat. I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag, took out my phone, dialed. "I'd like to report unlawful occupancy and property intimidation," I said. Every fork stopped midair. Every fake smile collapsed into silence. I locked eyes with Darlene and added, "And no, I'm not being sensitive this time." The silence didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt earned. 2 weeks had passed since the police came, since Darlene's voice turned shrill and useless, since Carolyn walked out without looking back. I hadn't spoken to either of them since. The house was still standing, and so was I. That morning, the light poured in through the kitchen window in the way it used to when Evelyn would sit at the table with her tea and crossword puzzles. The same cracked tile near the sink, the same chipped handle on the fridge. The echoes of what had been were still here, but they no longer clung like ghosts. I moved barefoot through the rooms, letting myself feel the floors, the wood, the breath of the house again. Evelyn's bedroom was quiet. I didn't open the closet. I didn't need to. Lucas didn't speak much when he arrived. He just nodded when I handed him a mug and kissed my temple like punctuation. Gentle, certain, brief. By afternoon, I was back in the study. The desk looked almost the same, but the weight on it had changed. I pulled out the photo of Evelyn and me from 2012, the garden one. She was wearing that ridiculous sun hat she loved, and I was pretending not to cry from pollen. It had been shoved in the back of a drawer. I cleaned the glass, hung it beside the bookshelf. Then I sat down with what was left of the letter. The corners were burnt, the edges curled like they'd tried to resist. I smoothed it out, taped it carefully to cardstock, framed it in a thin gold border. On the back, I wrote in pencil, proof that I was always seen. Outside, the wind picked up. I hung Evelyn's old wind chime just above the kitchen window. The soft notes it made weren't melodic, but they were hers. That evening, Lucas cooked. Not the soup exactly how Evelyn made it. He added ginger and forgot the thyme. But the warmth was there, the effort, the thought. When he placed it in front of me, he said, "You don't have to love this. I just wanted you to feel warm again." I took one bite and nodded. My throat closed, not from the spice. "You didn't erase her," I said softly. "You honored her." We ate in silence. A better silence. Later that night, I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote a letter of my own. Not to Evelyn, not to Darlene, not even to Carolyn, to myself. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. You were never invisible. You just let too many people close their eyes." No signature, just a line drawn beneath the words. When I slipped into bed, I didn't check the door locks, didn't scan the windows. I just turned off the light and slept. Sometimes the people who claim to love you will rewrite your story without ever reading it. They'll paint you as difficult, erase you from pictures, call you dramatic when you finally speak up. But silence doesn't protect you. Clarity does. If this story has taught me anything, it's this. Your peace is worth defending, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Especially then. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been made to feel like a stranger in your own family? Have you ever had to reclaim something you never should have lost? Drop a comment below and let's talk. If this video resonated with you, leave a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't connect with you, that's okay too. Tell me why and where in the world you hit play. If you found something healing here, or you're simply curious what comes next, subscribe to the channel and join me for more stories like this one. Your voice, your story, your presence matters here.